between where this is going and Florida. All right, and as that happens, there certainly could be a ramp back up. There's nothing in the structure in this, the overall large-scale structure in this, that says, hey, this thing is weakening. All right, so nothing there, and we don't think that is going, like Brock Long said, this is a very confident forecast. What we don't know are the little perturbations that are going to happen between now and Florida. Are we going to have 90-degree plus water temperatures here that are just going to allow this thing to pop up again? It's possible. So you'll notice there's not a big decrease in intensity from the hurricane center, nor should there be from what we see right now. The small scale variations with eye roll replacement cycles and maybe a smidge of dry air here and there, we're just going to have to wait and see how that impacts the hurricane. But again, I can't say it enough. Plan on a landfalling major hurricane in South Florida late Saturday night into early morning Sunday. All right, that's what we're looking at right now, and that's what you need to be preparing for, and that's pretty much what the federal and state levels are doing to prepare you for at home. Here's the cone. By the way, this is not just Miami's or South Florida's hurricane. It is Orlando's, it is Tampa's, it is Daytona's, it is Jacksonville's, it is Valdosta's, it is Macon's, it is Atlanta's, it is Charleston's, it is Savannah's. You guys are all in play here, and some of this wind energy, we'll see how wide it spreads out as it weakens. It will get into Alabama as well. So you got to keep an eye on this thing. Like Brock Long said, from Alabama to North Carolina, this is an area that we have to watch, because if you remember Opal back in '95, it was actually a weakening storm upon landfall. But as it got shoved into northern Georgia, it did cause quite a bit of extensive wind damage. So don't be surprised in time, well after landfall, that we see high wind warnings come out for parts of Alabama, maybe Tennessee, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina. You'll be in this thing as it begins to wind down. But thank goodness we have a dry Canadian polar air mass in place, because that's going to help to do it. The problem is we've got a very deep low pressure system, and it takes a while for these things to wind down. All right, so there's the earliest expected tropical storm wind. That's what I need you to prepare for. If you've got trees that are leaning toward your house, get ready for that. And remember, with respect to where you are in the center, you're going to deal, and let's say it's to the west of you, you're going to deal with east winds first, then you're going to deal with northwest winds. So you're going to get, it's not just one wind direction as this thing comes up through the southeastern states. You're going to get multiple winds from multiple directions. And that's why a lot of times this kind of tugging, and almost like a loose tooth, with the trees, they eventually come out, right? So that's what's going to happen with the wind field as it comes up through central Florida. This is the European solution. A great example of how the winds over a non-friction area, the water will be stronger. Notice on the east-west side, they're away from the center. The strongest winds are actually away from the center, but they do come up potentially up to 100 miles an hour. I wouldn't rule it out, all the way to the Georgia-Florida line. That is not an impossible scenario with this, depending on what it is when it comes in. But those big winds are going to come all the way up into North Georgia. We've got a full tree canopy. We've had a very healthy rainfall this year, so trees are full of leaves. There's been no defoliation at this point. We're not even remotely close to the fall color season in the southern Appalachians, so there's no reason to believe that our trees, with those, especially the oak species with the big leaves, aren't going to act like big kites and take on that wind. And like I told you, like a tooth that's loose, you can move it both directions. That's what the wind is going to do to a lot of the trees. So tree damage, power outages are going to be expected with this. A good look at the hurricane force wind probabilities. Basically follow that core. That tells you where the strongest part of the hurricane is going to go. And as you can see, it is right across Key Largo and then right up the gut into Florida. So, once we're done, once we get this over Lake Okeechobee, yes, the storm may be weakening in terms of its meteorological presence, but the fact is we have a very large, expansive wind field that's going to touch everybody. That's why it's a pretty wide area here where we're seeing these hurricane force winds. In size, this compares to maybe 2.5, 3 times the size of what Andrew was. So it's going to be a much wider destruction path. And whether it's a strong 4 or a minimal 5 again is irrelevant. You're still going to have the same power essentially with the wind there. So hurricane warnings are out. This is a good comparison. I'm so glad we finally got to this. Let's take a look at it. You can see the hurricane. This is Irma. It's huge. We know that the tropical storm force wind field extends out 400 miles. You remember Andrew, the last Cat 5 to strike the United States? There it is. You could literally take Andrew, all of it, including the tropical storm force wind field, and put it almost inside the entire CDO of Irma. All right, so you have two hurricanes of similar strength. The difference is with Andrew, we know that it was developing as it approached the shoreline. So a smaller damage area, potentially a more severe one, if you just take the two hurricanes at glance right now, but a much wider infield with Irma. And that's why, regardless of, that's why we've been saying this, regardless of track, regardless of where you are, you're going to deal with very, very strong and possibly destructive winds. We've seen this play out in the eye wall